Today, we are going to be talking about boundaries. And this is something that I really, really encourage to everyone who is dealing with a narcissist because boundaries are your way of not only protecting your peace, but also sending a message that you're protecting your peace and that they don't get to have free reign in your life. So, before we get started, take a deep breath, kind of ground yourself and settle in just to kind of give yourself permission to focus on this because boundaries are one of the most important things that we can do when we're dealing with a narcissist. Without boundaries, narcissists will do everything they can to fully take control of your life. And without boundaries, they kind of get to have that power and control and the ability to be in the driver's seat. And so setting a boundary actually puts you into the driver's seat and takes control away from them. So to just kind of get started, I'm going to just go through two things that I usually hear as a reason that someone that I'm working with has had trouble in the past setting boundaries. One of them is, I don't want to be mean. I feel like I'm so mean if I'm setting a boundary and I'm, putting limits on the narcissist or the toxic person. The second one is I'm afraid that the narcissist or the toxic person is going to react to when I set this boundary. So let's start with the first one. So when you set a boundary, are you being mean? No, you're not being mean. It might feel mean because it's not necessarily something that we all practice very regularly. We're not often taught how to set a boundary and what that actually looks like and what that might mean and why we set a boundary. So it's just like an awkward feeling initially when we start to practice boundary setting. And so the first thing I want you to recognize is that setting boundaries is not about the other person. Setting boundaries is about protecting your peace. So when you are setting a boundary, it is not because you were trying to punish the narcissist. You are not setting a boundary to make them feel bad. You are setting a boundary to protect your peace. And when you set a boundary, you send that message as well. Or when you set a boundary, you send that message that I am here to protect my peace. Because we only get so much time in this life. That's the one thing we cannot get more of. We cannot get more time. And if you're spending your precious time at the control with the control of the narcissist leading the way, you're not spending that time peacefully. And so if you're setting a boundary, you're protecting your peace. And when you send that message to the narcissist that I'm doing this for me, it has nothing to do with you, you're sending a clear message that your peace is worth protecting. So when you set a boundary, one thing to remember is that a boundary, again, isn't about the other person. It is about you stating what you will and will not tolerate in your life. So one way to say it is like a boundary. When you set a boundary, it's not having a conversation. It's not, is it okay if I decide to not let you in? It's not saying, I need you to do something else. It is you saying what you are going to do in any given situation. So it's saying something like, I'm not available after 8 p.m. If you want to get together, I'm only available until 4. It is, I will not be around you if you choose to drink. It is saying something like, again, it's not about putting the doing of the boundary on the narcissist, right? It's about what you're going to do if they have a certain behavior. I'm going to hang up the phone if you talk to me this way again. I'm not going to be around when you start yelling. And it's all based on things you can control. So the narcissist is free to do whatever the narcissist is going to want to do. But the boundary is a very clear statement of where your line and your limits are. Again, I'm not going to be around you if you're yelling at me. I'm not going to stay on the phone if you keep ignoring me. I'm not going to respond to your text after 8 p.m. those kinds of things. So that is a boundary. The boundary does not depend on the narcissist agreeing to it. The boundary is all about how you will respond in certain situations. So the next thing that is usually very uncomfortable about setting a boundary, because it's not how we normally talk, right? We usually don't talk like, I'm not going to accept that. We usually say like, please stop that, right? We usually put the power back in the hand of the narcissist or whoever we're talking to, right? It's kind of like dealing with a child on many, with narcissists, right? On many levels, it's very much like dealing with a child. And like if you were to be telling a child, go clean your room, or your room needs to be cleaned by the time you leave for school, right? Or I'm not going to give you dessert if you don't clean your room. We're very direct usually with children. But we don't often talk like that with adults because we assume that we can expect an adult to be like a reasonable person, which is not the case when we're dealing with a narcissist. So always remember that you're not dealing with a reasonable person when you're dealing with a narcissist. So just because they may look like an adult who has the capacity to understand where you're coming from, take your perspective, want to be on, a team with you, just because they look like they can do those things, they cannot. It's kind of like expecting to get into a Ferrari that looks amazing. And you're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be able to drive so fast in this car because look at it. It's just awesome. And then you get in and you find out that the Ferrari has no engine. Just because it looks fast and fancy on the outside doesn't mean it has the capacity on the inside to do what it looks like it should be able to do. So that is how we should approach a narcissist and why we set boundaries. Because yes, if they were a reasonable person, chances are we wouldn't have to set too many boundaries. But they are not a reasonable person. They look like an adult, but they're a child. So we have to speak to them like a child, which is like we were just talking about. I am not going to tolerate you yelling at me. I am not going to be answering your texts at 3 a.m. I'm not going to answer the phone at 3 a.m. Those kinds of things that are all very much in your control. It's not the please don't call me at 3 a.m. It's I'm not answering your phone call if you call me after 8 p.m. Something like that. So it's very direct and it's very simple and very clear what you're going to do if they do A, B, or C. And so the one thing that is always important to remember with narcissists is they don't believe what you say, they only believe what you do. So if you make these boundaries and you say, I'm going to do this if you do that, you have to follow through with it because they will only believe you as far as they've seen you act. So just like with them, right? Like, don't believe what a narcissist says, believe what a narcissist does. They also only believe what you do. So setting a boundary is your way, again, of saying where your line is and what you are going to accept or not accept, and then what you're going to do about it. And so the second thing that always comes up again is, well, the narcissist isn't going to like these boundaries, right? If the narcissist is your mom or your dad, and you say, I'm not coming to family dinner if you're going to make me feel, if you're going to start talking about my mistakes. And then you go to a family dinner and they talk about your mistakes. So the next family dinner, you're going to have to say, no, I told you I'm not coming to family dinners. And like, you still talked about my mistakes. And so I'm not coming anymore. Right. If it's a friend and you say to them, I'm not going to hang around you if you start telling my secrets to our other friends, or if I find out that you've talked behind my back, or, whatever it is, use boundaries with any relationship that the narcissist fills in your life. It's not specific to if it's a spouse or if it's a parent. Use boundaries regardless of who the narcissist is in what relationship to you. So when you set these boundaries, the second thing is the narcissist, as we've talked about, is not going to like them. Why do narcissists not like them? 2 reasons. One, they see boundaries as threats to their control, which is exactly why we want to set them. We don't want the narcissist to have control in our lives, right? So, and the second thing is they see them as a way that they're going to lose their access to getting what they want from you. That kind of goes into control, but narcissists, think about it. The narcissist up until this point has enjoyed being able to take full advantage of a lack of boundaries, right? And a narcissist, just like a child, will go up to the line, and usually a narcissist will cross the line, but they will get as close as they can and take as much as they can from a person until the person stops them from having access to them. So when you set a boundary, the narcissist is going to react. Just expect it, because the narcissist doesn't want something taken away from them. And they see that they're going to lose control, and they're also going to lose access to whatever it was that they were taking advantage of from you. So if it was finances and you take away the credit card, they're going to react. They're going to throw a temper tantrum like a child who doesn't get their way. If you put boundaries on them, like they can't access you after 8 p.m. or they can't access you throughout the week or whatever it is, and you say, I'm not responding to every text you send me, and you stick to that, they're going to react. So one of the best things that you can do in any situation with a narcissist is to set appropriate expectations. Not that they know these expectations, but that you know the expectations, because they've shown you who they are. You've seen who they are. So going into any situation hoping that this is the time that they will be different is just setting you up for disappointment. So when you go into a situation knowing you're going to be setting a boundary with a narcissist, if you are to expect, oh my gosh, hopefully they'll understand and they won't be upset, you're going to be the one who's disappointed, because they are going to be upset and they're not going to understand. Because again, they're like a child who's not getting their way. They're going to throw a fit. It may not be immediately, right? And it may not be an overt fit where it's, like just acting out in the middle of the street. It may be a covert, right? If you're dealing with a covert narcissist, it might come in something that's very passive aggressive. It might come in something where initially they're like, okay, thanks for telling me. And then later on, they try a smear campaign or they try to be passive aggressive and guilt you into changing your boundary. So set your expectations that yes, the narcissist is going to be upset and have some sort of reaction. And based on who you know that narcissist to be and what their behavior patterns are, set that expectation for yourself to know that this is probably what you're going to see when you set these boundaries. So boundaries are not negotiable. Boundaries are not optional. They are essential to you taking control back in your life from the narcissist. Again, whatever relationship the narcissist falls into in your world, they're non-negotiable. They're not optional. You need boundaries, because a narcissist will take and take and take and take and take until either there's nothing left to take or you set a boundary and say no more taking. So have that mindset. Give yourself permission and the grace to know that you're setting a boundary, again, not to punish them, but to protect you, and that you deserve that protection. You deserve that peace. So when you think of boundaries, there's three that really can kind of be all-encompassing. Number one is communication. And we've mentioned these a little bit as we've been talking. One, I'm not going to have a conversation with you if you're yelling, right? So whatever that means, if they start yelling, do you hang up the phone? Do you leave? Can you tell in a text conversation that they're yelling? Probably, right? And so then you just stop responding. Time and space is another boundary you can set, right? I'm not available without notice. I'm not going to answer the door if you just show up on my doorstep. I'm not going to just drop everything and show up to help you if you haven't given me notice, right? So you want to set those time and space boundaries as well. Communication, time and space, and then your energy. Your energy is something to definitely protect, because you give energy and they're never reciprocal, right? At least in a positive way. So you can say, I don't need to explain myself to someone who refuses to listen, right? Whenever you notice that the narcissist is doing what the narcissist always does, whether it's energy, time and space, or communication, you have a right to set and state your boundary. Sometimes you don't even have to state it. You can, if you've already stated it in the past and say you've said, like, I'm not going to listen to you if you're yelling at me, and then they start yelling, you don't need to restate that boundary. You can just hang up the phone, leave, whatever that case may be. So what is really important, again, is to remember It's not mean to set a boundary. It's not about punishing them. It's about protecting you, and set your expectations. They're going to have a reaction, right? And then also to make sure that you do what you say you will do, because they only believe what you do. They don't believe what you say. Just like when we hear them, we shouldn't believe what they say, just believe what they do. So one way to continue to feel okay when setting boundaries is to remember to be clear and calm. Try not to get upset. I know this is so much easier said than done, but I always like to have what I call like an anchor thought, or like a mantra, where not an anger thought, an anchor thought, like a boat anchor, where you know that this is the statement I'm going to go back to that brings me back to where I know I need to be, like an anchor does, right? Or a mantra, right? So whenever you know you're going to have to deal with a narcissist, get in your head ahead of time what that anchor thought or that mantra is going to be, right? Whether it is the statement of, I told you I'm not staying if you're going to yell, and then take the action that you have said you would take. So have that in your head to where you don't have to feel like you have to over explain. You already have your go-to statement. And then don't over explain, right? You don't have to go into, don't you remember when we were together, a week ago, I told you because this was going on. And don't you remember I said I was going to do this? Just state it. Or even if you have already said it before, you don't even have to restate it. Just take the action you said you were going to take. And then you can use, it's called the broken record technique. They're going to try to get you to engage in like this tug of war. I call it like they're going to like, don't pick up the other end of the rope. They're going to verbally toss things to you, or passive aggressively toss things to you to make you get emotionally engaged with them. Like, how could you do this to me? And as a good person, you're going to want to be like, I'm not trying to hurt you, right? They're going to, and that like, as soon as you give into that a little bit, they're going to like take. So have the anchor statement and the broken record statement in your mind before you even have an engagement with these people. So if it is, if you're in a conversation with them, say you're in a car and you can't get out of the car, and they're trying to like goad you into, communicating, say the same statement over and over and over and over again. Broken record. I told you I'm not having this conversation. I told you I'm not having this conversation. I told you I'm not having this conversation. Say it over and over and over again, right? Again, they're going to have a reaction. They're not going to like it because they're not getting their way, but don't over explain yourself. You've explained yourself enough, and they are committed to not hearing you anyway. So it does you no good to explain yourself to someone who is only trying to get their way. So I hope that makes sense. But plan for pushback and stick to your plan. So again, have a plan going in, what your statement's going to be, and expect them to react, and try to remain as calm as possible. It's really kind of like almost initially when you start to learn how to do this, you almost kind of have to psych yourself up for it, or calm yourself down for it, I guess, in some ways, where you have to be like, this is okay. I know my plan. If this happens, this is what I'm going to do. It's kind of like when soldiers or the Army, Navy, any of the armed forces, when they prepare for a battle, they have a plan long before they go into battle. They don't wait to get into battle to be like, oh my gosh, my emotions are so high. What do we do now? No, they have plan A, B, C, and they have practiced it and practiced it and practiced it, right? In person and probably also in their minds, right? Long before they actually get into the actual battle of it, because then it's just a muscle memory thing. It's A plus B equals C. Oh, if A happens, I do B, and then this is C, right? So as long as you have your plan and you've practiced it and prepared for it in your mind, you will be so much better able to handle whatever the narcissist throws at you, and always go with your plan. So one of the things that I always ask is, what boundary do you tend to struggle with? Is it time? Is it energy? Is it time? Is it communication? One of those three, excuse me, is usually that. And what fear do you have enforcing it? Narcissists love to really react on our fear. And if fear is something that keeps you from setting a boundary and enforcing a boundary, I would encourage you to talk to someone that you trust and ask them like to talk to you about those things that you're fearful of. Hopefully you have a therapist or somebody that you can go to that can let you air those fears out. Because oftentimes once we talk about them, they're not quite as fearful. And fears live in the dark. So as the longer we have those fears just replaying in our minds, the bigger the fears get. As soon as you talk about them, the fears usually will dissipate. And if you have somebody that you're talking with that you really trust and that has your best interest at heart, the fears are going to be solvable and they're not going to seem as big and as scary. So before we close, I want you to remember that you are not too much. By setting boundaries, you are not asking for too much. You are asking to be treated in a way that shows that the other person is respecting your needs. Narcissists have no interest in whatever the needs of anybody else are. Their only interest is in their needs, and they will do anything it takes for them to get their needs met. And if they think they can get them met from you, they're going to keep trying to do whatever they can to get those needs met from you. But if you set a boundary and you send that message that this isn't okay, this isn't happening, they will probably throw a fit, but they will then locate another person that they will try to get those needs met from. And they will more than likely leave you alone. Might take a little bit, but it all starts with setting a boundary. So I'm going to encourage you for this week, choose one boundary that you want to set. Think of the narcissist, think of how they most impact your life in a negative way, and think of a boundary that would make you feel much more peaceful. Is it deciding that I'm only going to look at the texts from my mom on Friday morning? And I'm going to silence her texts until Friday morning. And I'm going to look at them when I choose to look at them. Is it not answering the phone? Is it not engaging in a back and forth email conversation with your ex? Is it, sending somebody's email to a different folder to where you only look at it once a month when you decide that you're going to open that folder on your terms? What is the boundary that would best help you? Just think for the next 7 days, even 5 days, if you just want to do a work week, and think, what is that one boundary? How can I either set it or how can I start to reinforce it? Because every day is a brand new day and a brand new opportunity for you to start enforcing your boundaries. And the narcissist doesn't even need to know. It's not like you need to call them and say hey, I'm enforcing these boundaries this week. You do it for yourself. You do it silently. You do it however you need to do it, and they'll eventually figure it out. And so what is one boundary that you can really work on? Even if it's something that you've tried before and hasn't worked, but you know you really need it, today's a brand new opportunity for you to try again. Because a narcissist will try to chip away at you to try to get that boundary to go away, but it doesn't mean they have the ability to do that because you are the one that's setting the boundary. And again, it is not to punish them, it is to protect your peace. And you deserve that. And that is literally the least another person can do, is honor what you've said are your boundaries. And if they can't do that, if they're showing you that they don't want to respect your boundaries, that's even a bigger sign that boundaries are necessary. So I hope this was helpful. Again, you're going to choose one boundary to work on this week and practice it, because practice makes better. And so I hope this was helpful. Boundaries are so important because your peace is everything. So we'll see you next time.